Joint Resolution Number 13, resolution confirming the nomination of the Honorable Leslie L. Oldier of West Hartford to be Judge of the Superior Court.
Representative Jerry Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the acceptance of the Joint Committee's favorable report and adoption of the resolution.
Question before the Chamber is acceptance of the Joint Committee's favorable report and adoption of the resolution. Will you remark, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Judge Ollier is a graduate of Central Connecticut State College as well as the Western New England College School of Law. She also received her LLM in taxation from Boston University. She was first admitted to the Connecticut Bar in 1981, and then she went on to practice for about 25 years with the firm Cohn, Birnbaum, and Shea. Judge Ollier was first appointed to the Superior Court in the year 2006 by then Governor Rell, and she's here before us for reappointment, having Governor Malloy having submitted her name. Mr. Speaker, during her 8 years as a Superior Court judge, Judge Ollier has spent the primary 7 of the 8 years, serving in either the juvenile court or the family court. She has taken on what are considered to be amongst the most difficult assignments for a Superior Court judge, and she has, during the course of her 8 years until recently, she had not received any complaints against her for her performance as a judge. Mr. Speaker, the judicial branch does do judicial performance evaluation summaries, and during the course of her tenure, Judge Ollier's evaluations have overwhelmingly been excellent. Also, Mr. Speaker, the Connecticut criminal defense lawyers, as I mentioned earlier, they do submit their comments with respect to the judges who come before us, and I can report, and the Judiciary Committee members are aware, that Judge Ollier did receive positive comments from an assistant public defender who had to appear before her when she handled a GA docket. She said the assistant public defender who did submit these comments did state that Judge Ollier did not always agree with her, and they did not always, her arguments did not always prevail, but she felt that she always had an opportunity to be heard, and that there was a sense of fairness to the way the judge handled herself in that court. Mr. Speaker, I should point out, though, that there was a complaint recently against Judge Ollier. She did bring it to the attention of the Judiciary Committee during the course of her public hearing, and actually before that, and that complaint stems from an order that I believe involved an ex parte order that the judge issued, that the person who filed the complaint felt that she lacked jurisdiction. Those are issues that the complaint process will wind its way through, and if there is merit to that, then they will handle it accordingly. Also, if a judge does act in a way that lacks jurisdiction, there are certainly appealable issues that can be raised, and they can be addressed at the upper court level. Mr. Speaker, I know there has been some questions today with respect to Judge Ollier. I don't know her myself. She's in Hartford, and I'm on the other side of the state, but I can say that the Judiciary Committee members who had been contacted about her, for the most part, actually, I think there was one no vote, but overwhelmingly did feel that the comments that they heard with respect to Judge Ollier lent support and that she should be renominated. So I would urge adoption of this resolution.
Thank you, sir. Would you care to remark further on the resolution before us? Representative Rabimbas of the 70th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I do rise in support of the resolution that's before us for Judge Ollier. Certainly, I think we do have to take note that during the public hearing, we did hear overwhelmingly positive comments from individuals that have appeared before her, but we certainly do have to acknowledge that there was also representations made of potentially emails and some other stories of people who have come before this judge that were not particularly content, either from the way her demeanor was or also the end resolution of their cases. I think it's important to note that at the time that the judge's questionnaire was due, this judge did not have any complaints filed against her. There was one then thereafter, certainly, again, that she did bring to the Judiciary Committee's attention, and she appropriately was questioned on it and responded to it. I think the judicial review is set up in a way that if people do have complaints, that is the most appropriate way to file them, because that is an investigation that takes place into the merits of the complaints, interviews the parties involved and the judge, and it gives them then the opportunity to have that fair shake of what exactly is going on. And again, many times we do have judges that appear before us that have multiple complaints, but in this particular situation, she only had one complaint filed, and this was after the questionnaire, which she brought to our attention. So again, I think in the interest of fairness, a lot of these complaints that are being made, I don't think that there was a fair opportunity for the judge to then respond to them. Certainly she was questioned when she came before the Judiciary Committee. In acknowledging these complaints, she certainly, reflected on them, and there was nothing that was brought to the attention of the Judiciary Committee that led us to believe that this is not something she will not continue to reflect on, or something that would hinder her ability to carry on her position as a judge on the bench. I think, again, our reappointment process is just that, to bring to the judge's attention potential issues and problems that they may not be aware of. And certainly we hope that moving forward, they will take these allegations seriously and do whatever possible in their position as judges to, again, be as fair as possible to every person that appears before them. Again, not looking at the resolution of the cases, because you will always get people who are angry at the resolution. And again, but there's people that if you don't feel that you're going before a judge and you're getting a fair shake, no matter what that result might be, then we do have a problem. We need to make sure that our judges are treating everyone with respect and a sense of fairness. And again, I believe Judge O'Lear, after appearing before the Judiciary Committee and based on her experience on the bench, there was nothing that I was led to believe that she is not going to continue to reflect on these items and certainly, again, serve our state on the bench appropriately. So I do rise in support of Judge O'Lear.
Thank you, Madam. Would you care to remark? Would you care to remark further on the resolution before us? Representative Gonzalez of the third.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm voting no on this appointment. I have heard parents say that going into Judge O'Lear's courtroom is like being tied to the back of the pickup truck and dragged down a road late at night. That's how bad it is. No one can hear their cries and complaints, and it's not over until she said it's over. Those cries come from parents whose children Judge O'Lear removed an ex parte order, who Judge O'Lear did not take into consideration the loss of their jobs because of being required to go to court time after time as attorney piled on unreasonable bills. Their AFCC peers did the same. Those cries for parents say that Judge O'Lear appoints guardians ad litem and they force parents to pay their runaway bills or sometimes go to jail and to the taxpayer's dime. Parents are risking losing their jobs, taking welfare and the taxpayer's dime because of the constant appearance and the resulting professional fees of the whole cottage industry of guardians ad litem, therapists, supervised visitation center, and evaluation. Families are often put into the position of facing bankruptcy, liquidating college funds, unemployment, and welfare and taxpayers' dime. This needs to end today. The people that we represent deserve judges that perform their duties on judicial office impartially, competently, and diligently. Overwhelming public testimony concerning Judge O'Lear questioned her frequently, siding with attorneys. The people that we represent deserve judges. They have confidence, will conduct personal and extrajudicial activities to minimize the risk of conflict with their obligation of judicial office. The people deserve judges who shall not engage in activity that is inconsistent with the integrity and impartiality of the judiciary. They deserve a justice system that they believe in. The testimony tells me that they do not believe in Judge O'Lear. We need to send a clear message to renew people's faith in our justice system. And I listened to the testimony of the parents who have the courage to speak up in the task force and no vote on disappointment. It's terrible, terrible when you go to court and you are afraid to the judge. When you go into that court, you think that the judge is going to be fair. That's what you're expecting. You're not expecting special favors. No, you're just expecting the judge to be fair. And when you're dealing with child custody, that it is so emotional that you have to deal with that. You involve a lot of emotions. Judge O'Lear, she don't believe in that. When we say here, we expect the judge to treat everybody with respect, that's what I'm looking for, respect. But with all the respect, I don't think that she knows what is that. When she forced parents to liquidate the college funds, pension plans, life insurance, if this is caring for family, when she takes kids away from the parents with no complaint about neglect and abuse, and this is the best interest of the child? No. Today, this is not a small red flag. It's a huge red flag. And we have to look into that. We want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And leaving Judge O'Lear on the bench, that's what it is. Leaving a problem in the bench. I heard this morning when on the prayer, and it was very clear, the prayer said, fight injustice and poverty. Well, guess what? Today, we fight injustice. We have to say no to Judge O'Lear because we have to send a clear message to all the other judges. They're not gods. They are there to do their job. And as far as I know, and for all the complaints that I received, when we said there is a questionnaire, and that questionnaire at number 21 is no complaint about Judge O'Lear, well, I will tell you. I asked the parents. I received more than 1,000 complaints about Judge O'Lear. And when I asked the parents why they don't complain, they did not know to use the complaint system. They are afraid of retaliation. They are evidence that retaliation has happened in the court after they came to testify on January 9th. We did have around maybe 80 people that came to testify in front of the task force, child custody task force. And I will say that between those 80 people, maybe 40, 50 complain about Judge O'Lear. This is time to say no. This is enough. She destroyed family. And what is going on in the court is they go with the parent, they have the more money. It's like we giving them a license to sell kids to the parent that have the more money. And this got to stop. And we have an obligation because that's not only the people that I represent, it's the people that all of us represent. And we have to be very clear. You want them to be responsible. You want them to be fair. And this judge is not doing that. So I'm asking for all those parents that have been crying, men and women that came to testify, and they were crying. Man, they were not embarrassed to cry because they were suffering for their kids. For them today, let's be a voice and defend them. Let's say no to Judge O'Lear. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Would you care to remark further on the resolution before us. Representative Carter, the 2nd District.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, when we look at judges in this chamber, it's a very serious thing. There's no question about it. And I don't think anybody in this room wants to look at judges that we've had on the bench, and it's very difficult to question. But at some point, I think we have judges come through here all the time who have very, very little controversy. Now think about that for a second. How many judges come through this and there's no controversy whatsoever, yet we have one like this that has definitely had a lot of questions put out there about the way that judge has acted with respect to parents. So to me, I look at this as pretty much common sense. I say we err on the side of caution. We have a number of people who've lost faith in this particular judge. I don't see how in good conscience we can move forward when we have this the way it is today. So I will be a no vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. Representative Juan Candelaria of the 95th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to echo my colleague from the 3rd District. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about the judicial process, we as citizens look for a process that is fair, a process where we will be heard, a process where we'll be respected and we will be provided with dignity. Mr. Speaker, this is not the case when it comes to Judge O'Lear. No one is above the law. No one can control singly the courtroom. We need to use caution, and there's a lot of red flags, particularly to Judge O'Leary. We have heard testimony from people that have been before her who are afraid to go before this judge, and we shouldn't be afraid. But yet, consistently, we get a list of judges, we vote on them and move them on. But we never send a clear message. We should use caution. I think there's still questions that need to be answered. And we need and deserve that right. We need to ask the right questions. We need to investigate. We need to look forward. Because we're talking about the children. We're talking about the best interest of the children, which still we don't have a clear definition on. But if we're talking about the best interest of the children, how are we bankrupting these families? How are we separating families? I don't think that's the best interest of the child. I think it is the best interest of the individual that has the most amount of money to offer. Those are the ones that are benefiting. So, Mr. Speaker, I will be voting against this nomination. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative O'Day of the 125th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't normally like to talk on judges here in the chamber, but I do feel compelled to say something here now. As a trial attorney, I appear before judges often. I have not appeared before Judge O'Lear, and so I can't speak on personal knowledge, but I can tell you the process. And the process here was the judges go through judicial selection. And at one point in time, I was on judicial selection, and I became chair of judicial selection. And the judges have to get through that process of being asked questions. There's no record of it. Direct questions are asked. Judicial selection gets a very thick packet on every judge. Members of judicial selection reach out to members of the bar, to members of the public about judges. And they have to get through that process, which is a very difficult process to get through. I know people might ask, well, how many judges have not been qualified through judicial selection? I will admit that most do get through, okay? But some have had to come back many different times. This is Judge O'Lear's first time going through the process. She's a new judge. Based on what I've heard outside and during the committee hearing, does Judge O'Lear need to improve her demeanor at times? I think so. I've not witnessed it firsthand. But I will tell you, dozens and dozens of lawyers who appeared before her regularly think very highly of this judge. She's not perfect. Who of us are perfect? Okay, a lot of judges need help at times in their demeanor. But Judge O'Lear got through judicial selection. Judge O'Lear then was renominated by the governor. Before we send any judge, let alone Judge O'Lear, out and not approve her through this process, I believe we need to give her one more chance. I do believe this process needs to be improved. And by this process, I mean the judicial process of appointing GALs. Okay, clearly the system needs improvement. But do not throw this judge out based on a problem with the process of judicial guardian ad litem's. This judge deserves another chance. If she continues to have problems, we can address it next time. We can address it through judicial selection, can address it, and we'll address it. But I do not believe the complaints that we've heard of Judge O'Lear rise to the level of her not getting through this this legislature. I believe she deserves another chance. Certainly the warning has been sent that the judges need to be more aware of their demeanor, particularly with pro se litigants. But do not vote no simply because you have a problem with the process. Let's fix the process. Don't penalize this judge for that problem with the process, please. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. Representative Vargas of the 6th District.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had the, I don't know if it's a privilege or what it was, I was appointed by the Children's Committee to serve on the task force regarding legal disputes regarding the custody of minor children. It was an eye-opening experience to serve on that task force. We had to argue quite strenuously to even get a public hearing on the whole issue of legal disputes over the custody of minor children. Our task force was co-chaired by 2 guardian ad litem's. The whole task force was made up of people who have a vested interest in preserving the family court system as is and believe that the status quo is working. I mean, it's remarkable. But after strenuous argument, we managed to get a public hearing that went on till 11 o'clock at night, and we had a chance to listen to people who have gone through this court system, the family court system. There is no jury in the family court system. It's a one-person operation. One individual has all the authority to make the decisions there. It reminded me of North Korea rather than America. I saw people testifying that after they were bankrupted by their guardian ad litem, had to go before a federal bankruptcy judge and say, I have no more money. I can't pay my debts. The house is gone. The kids' college account is gone. All my savings are gone. And finally, after being granted bankruptcy, go back to family court, and the judge said, you owe the guardian ad litem $20,000 and you will pay. But, Your Honor, I've been absolved by the federal bankruptcy court. You want to see your kids again? You want to ever spend time with your children again? You'll pay the guardian ad litem that $20,000 you owe them. What kind of a system is this? This is a system crying for reform. Now, I know, and I have all the respect in the world for the Judiciary Committee. I know that all the committees in this legislature try to do the best they can. And I know the process. A lot of nominations come before the committee. You ask your questions, you make your recommendations, and I'm loath to go against the recommendation of the Judiciary Committee. But in this instance, this particular judge, the behavior of Judge O'Lear is so egregious that I'm going to vote no, because I think we need to send a message. If we can't even stop the renomination of a judge like this, then the whole process is broken. This reminds me of probate court years back when judges would put a friendly attorney of theirs in charge of the custody of the property of some elderly person and make them the guardian of the estate, and a few months later the estate was gone. And that was a system that was crying for reform, and we did a good job in reforming that system. Family court needs reform. I'd just like to say, and I noticed that some of my colleagues, like my colleague here across the bench, Republican colleague who got up and said, you know, they practice law, they haven't practiced law in front of this particular judge. and defended the system the way it is. But I've got to say to all my colleagues that are attorneys, off-the-record conversation with attorneys that I've had is that attorneys generally feel they have to support the judges because they never know in front of whose courtroom they'll be standing. So, you know, with all due deference to my colleagues who are attorneys, I think it's a system that is inbred. I think, you know, I'm an educator. I got to say, I'm happy I'm not an attorney today. I'm an educator, a retired educator, so I'm going to speak my mind on this issue. We need either a jury system in family court. We need to put limits on how much guardian ad litems earn. We need to have a code of ethics for guardian ad litems. We need to make sure that they're supervised, that they're evaluated. You know, right now, if you have a complaint against your guardian ad litem, the only person you can go to is to the judge that appointed them. Good luck with that. Representative Minnie Gonzalez and I were the only two legislators serving on the task force. And we, together with another member of the task force, Jennifer Vandernolt, we filed a minority report regarding this issue. The majority report made some suggestions for some reforms. We thought they didn't go far enough, so we issued a minority report. I'm hoping that legislation will come out of the Judiciary Committee addressing some of those issues, and that we'll have legislation in front of us, and that the Judiciary Committee will hold its own public hearing. There was so much frustration after that public hearing, so many people that found out about it when it was too late, that Minnie and I, as legislators, held another public hearing. That one went on till 9 o'clock at night. And again, the outpouring of people. Fortunately, there's some parents whose kids have already reached the legal age of 18, so they're no longer under the grip of the family court system, and were able to speak their minds openly. There are people who have moved out of state, people who chose not to divorce and continue in an abusive relationship rather than losing the ability to share in their children's lives. You know, when you separate a parent from a child, I can't think of anything more horrible than separating a parent from a child simply because of a relationship between the mental health professionals, the attorneys, and the judges, because their relationships seem to carry more weight than the facts. This is unconscionable. We're here to represent the people of the state of Connecticut. We're here to represent the average person there that voted us, voted for us, even those that didn't vote for us. We're here to represent the people, the welfare of the state, the residents of the state of Connecticut, regardless of whether they're even registered to vote or not. I feel that obligation, and I after listening to hours of testimony, reading testimony, getting emails, getting letters, getting phone calls, having people bare their souls and cry about what's going on in these courts, I'll tell you something. I'm so glad my boys are 38 and 37, and I'm married 40 years to my spouse, and I have never had to deal with this divorce system because it's an industry. It's an industry that almost calls for a federal investigation under the RICO Act. It's become almost like a racketeering operation. People are making themselves, you know, we pay guardian ad litems. You know what we pay guardian ad litems? When it's an indigent parent, we, the state of Connecticut, we pay $50 an hour to a guardian ad litem. Some of these attorneys come in and they want to charge their rates, their legal rates. They told us, well, they even tried at the task force to recommend that only attorneys be allowed to be a guardian ad litem. Well, listen, I had to speak up and say, how about a chaplain in the armed forces who's been counseling married couples? And now they retire, come back to civilian life. Why couldn't they be a guardian ad litem if they've been successful at conciliating parents? Because we're not talking about conciliating parents here. We're talking about keeping parents fighting and arguing because it's billable hours, billable hours, billable hours. People come, I charge my clients $250 as an attorney. I'm going to charge these parents $250 an hour, even though the state of Connecticut pays only $50 an hour. In Greenwich County, it's worse. People are charging $400, $500 an hour. And you know what? Since the two of you can't seem to get together on the hours you're going to see the kids, we may need a professional scheduler who's a buddy of mine. Cha-ching, cha-ching. And you know what? Because now you're acting a little emotional, we may need a mental health professional to assist you. Cha-ching, cha-ching. And all these people know each other. And they all work together with the judge's blessing. And once the judge has handed the case over to the guardian ad litem, forget about it. The judge only wants to hear from one person, the guardian ad litem. You try to speak up, but I have a DCF report showing this is not quite accurate. You will shut up in this courtroom or you'll spend the night in jail. Does that sound like America to you? Please, I urge you all to vote against the reappointment of this judge. If we can't at least send a message that one of the worst judges does not get reappointed, then I think we've failed our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would you care to remark further? Representative Cocaruda of the 101st.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand in support of what you've heard here today. You know, I think a lot of us haven't been paying attention, and I can't support this nomination today. We've heard from a lot of people that we need to take a look at our family courts system. All we see, when you look into it, the amount of money into it is scary. The lack of accountability is unacceptable. So I stand, you've heard all these stories. We heard so many of them. I wasn't on the task force, but the fact that we have not heard a lot of complaints about this judge, we heard again and again last night about the concern for retribution, what has been done, how children have been taken away, how grandmothers have lost their pensions, their retirement, just supporting their, trying to help their grandchildren. This system is broken. By reappointing this judge, we're talking 8 years. 8 years. If it's broken, let's do something about it. Let's not put someone in place that we've been hearing again and again. And if there are not a lot of complaints about her, talk to these people. The fact of retribution, the fact of lack of accountability is so rampant in our family court system. We need reform. Let's start today. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Would you care to remark further? Representative Gonzalez for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the second time. I heard a while ago that this is not about her. This is about the process. That's wrong to say. This is not about the process. This is about justice. It's not about process. She's not a new judge. She's been on the bench for 8 years. And in 8 years, she's been destroying families and kids. About 8 years. And I would like to say, give her another chance. How many people they're going to destroy? How many families she will destroy in 8 years? In 8 years, you're going to ask and call families what she did to them in 8 years, and it's horrible. I was not going to say this. I was going to be quiet in this. I think that maybe it's not going to sound that good, but I met a lady in the hallway. I think she was waiting for me, and she said, "Do you have a couple of minutes?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "I got a problem," and she said, "It's about court families." And I said, "Yes. Well, we've been working with that." And she said, "I was watching you on January 9th. And I said, "Why you didn't came to testify? Do you have a problem with the court system?" She said, "Yes, but I'm afraid of retaliation." She said, "Representative, I lost everything. I lost my home. I lost my pension plan. I lost my college fund for my kids. And in a couple of months, I'm going to be homeless. I got nothing. And I end up losing my kids with no complaint about child abuse or neglect." And she said, "And the last time that I went to court, I was waiting in court. And even though that I know that I was waiting for Judge O'Lear, she said, when The marshals came and said, they said, I'm going to open court. Judge O'Lear is here. And I'm again, I didn't plan to say this, but I'm going to say so you guys know what bad it is to be in that court. When she heard that name, she couldn't control and she peed in her pants. Is that good? 8 years. And this is a way that people feel about her. 8 years. Listen, we give her 8 more years, and we'll see what she's going to do with our people. You know, people will say, why Representative Gonzalez is so involved in this? You know, in my community, we don't have $150,000 to fight for our kids. We don't have 250. Listen, maybe we don't have not even 50,000. And we lose our kids. And we cry because we lose our kids. And we don't have the resources to defend our kids. But in my community, that's where we lose our kids. That's all we have. But in other community, especially the white community, they end up losing more. They lose their kids. They lose their homes. They lose everything they got. And these people, they end up homeless. They have to go to their parents and ask for more money so they can keep fighting for the kids. $1 million, which sounds ridiculous. $1 million. And some of these parents more than that. No, it's not about the process. It's about a judge. Because the process, you can follow the process. And if you know as a judge that the process is not right, as a good judge, you will follow, you will do the right thing. This is not about the process. This is about abusing parents. This is not about having compassion. And other than that, it's not only abusing parents. What about our kids? What about kids? They've been turned to parents. They got complaints about neglect and abuse, and they turn those kids to those parents. If this is all process? No, this is not about process. This is about a judge that is not doing what she's supposed to do. And I will ask my colleague, all of you guys, can you look to the porch? Up there, we got parents that say no to Judge O'Lear. And that's what we're supposed to do today. No to Judge O'Lear. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam. Would you care to remark? Would you care to remark further? Representative Jerry Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and for follow-up. We heard a lot of very passionate and emotional testimony, and I can tell very clearly that it all comes from the heart, and that people are very serious about what they're saying. But I think it is important to point out, this is one Superior Court judge out of about 160 to 175, depending upon the time of year or how the rotation's going. And many of the concerns I hear are about the way, about the system. And I don't think you can have one judge who can legally take it upon themselves to change the system, but I think it would require some help from us. And I think that's something that we can continue to discuss as the session goes on. But with respect to this one judge, as I said earlier, she had no complaints against her, at least formal complaints, until December during the course of her 8-year term. She also took on family and juvenile cases, which are the most challenging that you can do as a judge. And we need judges to be willing to sit on these dockets. Of course, we need judges to also know the law, to also be compassionate to those who appear before them. But as I said earlier, the reviews that we received from those who tried cases before her were overwhelmingly excellent. And while there are people who are upset with some of her decisions, and I do believe the complaint process should continue, and that would be appropriate, or the appellate process can continue if she made an error on the law. That is also appropriate. And but we can't have, if we're going to have judges that are willing to sit on these dockets, these very challenging, difficult, emotional dockets, we have to give them some ability to use their judgment. And even if they make a mistake, and if that decision is reversed, I mean, we've had judges that are coming before us today many of whom have been reversed on appeal. Many have had complaints. It's just that is how this works. I do think what we also heard about how Judge O'Lear will hear what's being said today, and I do think it will make her a better judge and better before the people who appear before her, especially those who are self-represented. And I understand the harm that these cases can cause on families, and it's something that we need to strive to do better with. But this is one judge out of 160 some judges, and she can't change the system on her own. So I would urge adoption.
Thank you, sir. Would you care to remark? Would you care to remark further? Representative Vargas for the second time.
You know, I normally would agree with the comments just made by Representative Fox, House Chair of the Judiciary Committee. And I'm all for second chances, second opportunities. But what has happened here has little to do with the law, with the role of a judge. It has to do with the basic human decency of how you treat people. And I don't think those are things that change easily. People may not complain. That may be true. Many of these judges have very few complaints against them. But also it is very difficult to complain against a judge when the future relationship between you and your kids is at stake. People who have filed complaints who had visitation rights up to that point where they filed a complaint have been stripped of their visitation rights. We had people come up to us say, 4 years, 5 years since I've seen my kids. If you try to see your kids indirectly, you wind up in jail. You're in violation of a court order. It's a horrible situation. The retaliation, even retaliation that happened to people who came to our task force public hearing and testified, when they went back to court, they were retaliated against. And I said to them, you know what? We need to hear these stories. I know it's difficult for you as a parent to risk your relationship with your child to try to improve a system like this. But these stories have to be told. I believe that if there is a public hearing on reform of the family court system, I believe that if there is a public hearing, the Judiciary Committee will get an earful this time. Because I think people have tried to play nice for so long, hoping that they will get to see their children. First they tell you if you behave and you play along with the system, in a couple of weeks you'll see your kids. So people have a tendency to play along. A few months later, you still haven't seen your kids, you start getting a little upset. Don't worry, a little longer. Play along with your guardian ad litem. Make sure you pay your bills on time. A little longer, you'll see your kids. Months go by, years go by, finally people start criticizing the system and rebelling against the system. And that's what's happening today. That's what you're seeing today. You're seeing parents up there in the gallery, and you're seeing them here because they're beyond fear now. They're losing hope they'll ever see their kids again, and now they're willing to speak out against this system. And I'm not saying that this judge is the only one that doesn't deserve reappointment. Believe me, there's quite a few of them that don't deserve reappointment because of their behavior. So I'll just end on this note. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this reappointment of this particular judge. If we're here next year during the long session and one of these judges that has deprived citizens of their constitutional rights under the U.S. Constitution to freedom of speech, if I have to see another judge that has blackmailed parents by holding their kids' visitations ad hoc for money, If I see that again, next time I rise to speak, and some of you may think I've been a little long-winded here, but you know what? If I come here, I'll be willing to filibuster against the appointment of a judge if I have to stay here for 24 hours speaking against them. Because I think it's atrocious that we allow these people to wear the robe of justice in our courts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would you care to remark further? Would you care to remark further? If not, staff against the will of the House. Members, take your seats. The machine will be open.
The House of Representatives is voting by roll. The House of Representatives is voting by roll. Will members please report to the chambers immediately?
Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? Members, please check the board to make sure your vote is properly cast. If all the members have voted, the machine will be locked and the clerk will take a tally. Will the clerk please lock the board? Will the clerk please announce the tally?
House Joint Resolution 13. Total number voting 145. Necessary for passage 73. Those voting yea 78. Those voting nay 67. Absent and not voting 5.
The resolution passes.